Hi, my name is Heather Owens. I'm an Associate Director of Career Planning and Development with Kennesaw State University, and I work specifically with the College of Business. So anything that relates to business and the students that are pursuing a degree, be it finance, entrepreneurship, an MBA, I'm here to support those students in their pursuit of professionalism.
Good morning. My name is Monty Greene, and I am the program manager here at Elevance Health in our IT apprenticeship program.
I'm Shane Evans at Chattahoochee Technical College. I serve as Dean of Economic Development, which I oversee WIOA, our non-credit training and apprenticeship programs.
Tell us about your career path and how did you end up in your current role?
I have a very unusual career path. I started out kind of seeing my first opera at 16, and I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. And my parents were surprisingly supportive of that. And they supported me through getting voice lessons, thinking maybe she's going to grow out of this. I did not. I continued to pursue it. I got my bachelor's degree and I got my master's degree, which brought me to Georgia. And I was singing professionally for many, many years and really loved it. I also had a studio of piano students and voice students, and I taught at the collegiate level at Georgia State University, and I taught at University of North Georgia, and then at Kennesaw State University. During the pandemic, I had a lot of time to think about what my personal values were. And I realized that as much as I love traveling, I did really love staying at home. And I really enjoyed being student facing and coaching students and helping them discover what their career paths were. And I was talking to one of my friends who was working in career services at the time, and she said, I really think that you would be good at this. You have the skill sets for this. And I looked into it and I thought it was going to be a very interesting position if I was accepted into it. And I started out as a career and internship advisor. And about a year and a half later, I ended up getting the role of associate director, and I've been in this position for about 2 years. So it's a little bit of a curvy path to where I am, but I think it's a good representation of the fact that a lot of adults choose different career paths as they move through their working life, and that it's okay to learn new skills and it's okay to pivot into new areas.
Wow, my career path. It's been one of those that I would probably say you probably hear quite a bit from those of us who are in IT, especially an OG like myself. When I started my career, I wasn't thinking about information technology because really IT was something that was coming on the scenes when I was coming up in my career. So I certainly took the traditional route, if you want to call going from high school to college as traditional. I took that traditional route. But when I was, in college, I was really going to college. I started out going to college to become a doctor. Many of the folks in our family are in the medical field. We have lots of doctors and nurses. And so, of course, I was going to go down that path. And so as I was doing that, I discovered very quickly that for me, becoming a doctor wasn't, the thing that, excited me every day. I certainly love science and I love, the research and things of that nature. But to do that from a physician's point of view, where you are, the best way I could describe it is that as a physician, a lot of things you do every day doesn't change because you have to really get good at what you're seeing on a regular basis. That whole idea of doing the same things all the time didn't really appeal to me. And so as I was in that field, I really kind of switched over to communications and business as my degree focus. And as I was doing that, then this whole industry of IT started coming to life. And so, for me, when I was graduating from college, I think the story I always tell young people when we talk about career development is that I saw myself having three different pathways that I was considering from college. And that was I could become an entertainer or singer because I do like to sing and I still do some of that in my church. or I could become a politician. And many people always still want me to become a politician, but there was reasons that I didn't see that as the career for myself. Or the other thing at the time was really going into some type of sales opportunity because I love presenting. I love talking to people. I love engaging with new ideas, creating solutions. Those are things that, are appealing to me. And so I saw sales as one of those things that I could truly do. And then I decided if I was going to be in sales, that I wouldn't just sell any old thing. I really wanted to sell something that was a high ticket item or very expensive, because in sales, of course, you make commissions based on what you sell. And so for me to make as much money at the time that I wanted to make, if I was selling something like a big Lear jet versus paper, for me, that was going to be a difference. And so, and then of course, the idea of research and knowing something I didn't know and finding out the information, those things that were already appealing to me, were part of that solution as well. And so I took the path, obviously, of going down the sales path. And so as I was coming into my career, if you will, I took my first job at AT&T. And for some of you that know AT&T today, it was a very different company back then. AT&T was the monopoly or the big giant when it came to anything that was considered communications. And so, they were the big giant. They were the only company for a long period of time. And so that's who I went to work for. And as I went to work for them, they actually began to change. So the government stepped in and made them break up because they were so big and it didn't allow competition in the industry. It made them break up. And when they were breaking up, I was coming into the organization at that time, and this new idea of IT started to take shape. And so there was a division of AT&T that was communications. That's the traditional telephone and that side of the house. And then there was this new environment, this new frontier called information systems or information technology. And that was brand new, and no one really knew what that was going to be. We knew that there was computers part of it. I had no idea what a computer was, but it seemed fascinating to me that this was going to be this new frontier. And I'm going to connect this same position later on in our discussion to the opportunities in this same industry that are happening now when you think about things like AI, artificial intelligence, and generative AI, and what all of that means, because I believe now we're in that same new frontier of what technology is going to look like. And so I took that on, began to learn about computers and information technology. I actually went to school out in Denver, Colorado. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. And now I was taking on my first job after college and moved to Denver, Colorado, and was there for 2 years. And then they transferred me over to MIT, where I was there in Boston for another year, just to learn all of this new world called information technology. And so it was a brand new, exciting industry for me. And I was going to be selling these big ticket items to these big companies, because all the companies would have to change the way they were doing business. And so that's how I started in my career.
I started out like a lot of individuals in high school. I was going to college. My parents impressed on me that you need to go to college. I would be the first in my family to go to college. And I graduated high school, and at the time I was 17, so I couldn't get a job, a real good job at the time, because was not old enough. You had to be 18 to work for a lot of the companies I was looking for, seeking employment. So I decided, I'd work some part-time jobs, go to college. Then it got to be about this time of year, which, June, July, and I got to thinking, do I really want to go to college? So I kind of decided not to go to college. I'd been accepted and kind of backed out, got my refunds back, and went to work, and had a good work career starting out, made very good money, but I realized I need to go get an education if I wanted to go beyond just that entry-level job. So I enrolled at what is now Chattahoochee Technical College. I was in a drafting program. Realized very quickly I did not like drafting. I just kind of went through the catalog and picked something. My background, lived on a farm, grew up in agriculture, was not going to be a farmer, wasn't a lot of money in being a farmer. So we had a horticulture department here at Chattahoochee Tech. Went and talked to the instructor. Got enrolled in horticulture in my second, at the time it was quarters, not semesters. Enrolled there and absolutely loved it. Was still working 5, 6 days a week, 8 hours a day going to school. So I was a full-time student, full-time employee. I was working, as I mentioned, in manufacturing, and then decided I was going to take a pay cut, several dollar an hour pay cut, and went to work for a landscape company. So I've done that simultaneously while attending Chattahoochee Tech. Went on and got my associate's degree with a partnership with Georgia Highlands. Then decided I was going to University of Georgia, so I had to, leave my job. Went to work for, went down to enrolled at UGA, finished 2 years at University of Georgia, and got the bright idea that I was going to run my own business. So directly out of college, I started my own business and worked for that for about 10 years. Had a successful business. Had some unfortunate accidents happen, no fault of my companies, and realized that maybe I want to do something a little bit differently. So I started teaching part-time at Chattahoochee Tech, and at the time Appalachian Tech, in horticulture, done some dual enrollment teaching, and realized I couldn't juggle teaching and a full-time job and run a company at the same time. Took a full-time position with Chattahoochee Tech, taught for 5 years, moved in administration, worked in academics for quite some time, and then the last 8 years I've been in economic development, so working with a lot of business and industry. So, and in the meantime, I also worked on my master's degree while I was serving as a administrator on academics.
What key factors should individuals consider when deciding between learning pathways?
I think some of the things that you really need to consider when you are choosing between different career paths and options and educational pathways is truly what your personal values are. Do you like staring at a screen all day, or are you a person who wants to be outside? Are you a person of action? Are you a person who really wants to be problem solving? And I think thinking about those particular things is going to be um, telling of what kind of education pathway you choose. So if you decide that you want to be out in the world and you want to be a problem solver and you want to figure some things out, you want to be outside, you want to be inside, you want to be customer facing, maybe you're thinking about becoming an electrician or a plumber. It could be also that you are interested in how computer and technology works. And you don't necessarily need to have a degree from a four-year institution to do that. You could get an associate degree and do something in the technology field. But if you're looking at maybe wanting to do research, or you're interested in the finance field, or you have a passion for writing or educating, that might mean that your career path involves getting that four-year degree. So I think really thinking about what's important to you, how you work, and what type of environment you want to be in is going to help guide your direction in terms of your educational choice.
So this is a really, really good question. And I think that the thing that's going to determine the pathway or that you go down ultimately is really going to be where you decide to some degree what it is that you want to do or what you're interested in doing. And here's what I mean by that. So let's say that I want to be a doctor, right? So as a doctor, I already know a few things. In other words, I know I have to get some level of schooling, and then that's going to be followed by getting my MD certification, if you will. I got to go through residency school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, before I ultimately get to that credential that I can actually go do something as a physician, as a doctor. Different than someone saying, I want to, let's say, be an engineer, or I want to make things or build things, or, I'm an arts type of person, and, I just love being creative. And so those types of opportunities that may not necessarily require you to go down a path of further education, in the sense of your traditional going to 4 years of school and getting your bachelor's degree and those sorts of things. Then you start to think about what type of apprenticeship programs. In many other countries, apprenticeship programs are part of the educational process. And this is something I learned, as I was investigating these ideas around apprenticeships. So you take Europe and Germany and places like that, what typically happens is when you finish up your education, say in what we call elementary school, the next place that they actually go is into an apprenticeship. And that becomes part of their, if I was putting it into our terms again, their high school experience, where they're now learning something specific about the industry and the fields that they are interested in. And they're getting that practical experience. And so then many of them take that directly into their career, where then the education that we call college or post-secondary education happens as they are in their careers. Very different in the model in the United States, where we kind of have this traditional model that says, high school, college, then career, and a lot of that's changing now. And so what I would tell you is that you really want to first start with, what is it that I want to do, or at least interested in, that I think I want to do? And then knowing what those things are, you then want to consider pathways to accomplishing that from a skill perspective. And so if I can gain the skills, let's say, for example, in software development, by actually just writing code, I have people that are 13, 14 years old that are write better code than someone that I work with in my company right now, because they've been doing it for a long time. They're now 16, 17, 18 years old, and they know all of, the nuances and the new codes and things of that nature, because it's something they love to do. So imagine now, as that 16-year-old, right, that they're coming into industry with all of this skill and experience that they put into their own personal portfolios, right? And they bring that with them and demonstrate their ability to do something that someone's trying to hire somebody for. And so when I need someone to write code, for example, I don't need you to necessarily have a bachelor's degree in computer science. I need you to learn how to write code. And so there are many companies are going to look at those certifications, those experiences, those apprenticeship opportunities as the skill and the development that you need in order for you to hire you. Now, as you progress up, over time, there may be other things you need to acquire that does require you to go get some additional formal education. So for example, if I want to manage people, I may have a requirement that I need to have a certain degree to be able to help manage people as I'm in my career field. But that's not where I had to start, is the point. And so I would just say that you start with considering what you're interested in. You follow that by what pathways exist, because there are many today. There are training programs, apprenticeships. There are obviously your technical schools. There are your traditional four-year school. So a variety of things you can do, and none of them are the wrong answer. All of them are the right answer based on what's the right pathway for you. And the final thing that I would say on this is, make sure you're talking to somebody who's gone before you, because they will help you understand what those steps look like, as opposed to you assuming, right, that this is the pathway that I need to take.
Do your research. I think a lot of students kind of think they want to do something, but once they get enrolled, or start those first classes, those entry-level classes, they realize they don't want to do that. I'm all about going on YouTube, looking, researching particular colleges or career fields. I have a saying I tell a lot of individuals, whether they're young adults or older individuals looking for a career change: perception versus reality. What we see on television, or what we think a career is, or what we think an education pathway is, isn't necessarily what the reality of it is. So, go in, go to the college, do some tours, get with those, student outreach groups, do the campus tours, but also meet with instructors, meet with individuals that are serving in that role, newly graduated students, go look at their labs, do a little investigation, compare them to other schools, also compare the cost. look at the cost. When my daughter was looking at education, she was like a lot of people in Georgia. They want to go to the big SEC schools because they have football. They play football 6 games a week, they're home games. Outside of that, it's 4 walls and it's education, and you got good instructors. So, look at opportunities to work. If you want to go away, if you look at that expense, if you want to go out of state, Georgia is very fortunate with the Hope and Hope Career Grants and the financial aid that, it's hard to compete these out of state schools with the Georgia, what they offer, the technical college system and the university system. So, just investigate, look at it, start that as early as you can. And you may be 30 years old and starting that, but look and see if that's a good fit for you. There's a lot of career assessments out there, but more importantly is building those relationships, those individuals that do that job. Reach out to companies, reach out to individuals that through organizations or community, and ask them, what is this career like? What's a day look like? If you can, go in and shadow, do internships, any type of a opportunity to get you in front of someone to see what that job or that education role involves.
How can someone get the most out of their learning pathway?
I think that the most important thing when you're trying to get something out of your education is what you put into it and what you take away from it. So I think experiential education is really, really important. So that means internships, that means externships, that means apprenticeships. Anytime you can get some hands-on experience and then really reflect on what it is that you learned while you were doing that is incredibly valuable. I would also say that networking is huge. No matter where we are in our economic situation, whether the economy is growing and there are lots of job opportunities, or whether we feel like we're kind of in a stagnant place with the economy, networking is always going to be your friend. So building relationships and keeping up with those people that you meet in different working situations is going to be so helpful. I would also say you want to make sure that you continue to connect with your teachers and your professors and keep those relationships going, because you never know who they might connect you with. So really having some hands-on experience and building relationships is going to be incredibly valuable as you continue to grow in your work life, but also in your private life, building relationships, continuing to learn and grow in things that you really love to do is also really helpful, and keeping that growth mindset going as you move through your adulthood.
So apprenticeships, I think, are just one of these wonderful opportunities now that we have available to us. And so I would just say to you, if you are considering an apprenticeship opportunity, that the best way to take full advantage of the apprenticeship is to come in and do a few things. Number one, make sure that when you're in that apprenticeship that you take advantage of everything that's available to you. And here's some of the things that I think people miss sometimes. There are individual people that are usually engaged in your apprenticeship programs that are the experts. Remember, the idea of the apprenticeship program in itself is that you're the apprentice trying to learn from what we call the journey person, right? In the back of the day, they said journey men, but they're journey women as well. So I'll just say journey person, right? But these are the experts, and they got a lot of knowledge. And in addition to the knowledge they also have a big, vast network. And this whole idea of your network is your net worth, that has not changed. And so the more that you can connect with people that are going to help you in your career development is going to be vital. And a lot of those individual people are going to be right there as part of the apprenticeship program you're in. So definitely take advantage of that. I think the second thing that I would say in that regard is in the training that's available, take as much of it as all of it, because in many cases that training is available to you and it can be free while you're in the program. So for example, in the program that I run, we require our apprentice to get certifications every year, but it doesn't necessarily mean you got to get one. You can get multiple certifications. So certainly that means more work, more effort, but it's all free. So imagine some of these certifications in certain these industries that may cost you $1,000 or $2,000 just to get them, and you're getting them for free as part of the apprenticeship programs. And many of these times in the apprenticeship programs, that is the case. But what I see many times is that the individual comes in and does the bare minimum to kind of check the box. Well, you can do that, but here's the deal. At some point, you're going to need those other certifications. You're going to need those other trainings. You're going to need those other experiences and exposures. So why not just fully engage while you're there and get that opportunity? Because here's the deal. When you're done and you're in your career, it's going to be much harder to go back and get all of that additional training and certification and knowledge, because the time you had in the apprenticeship programs was the time that you should have fully taken advantage of it. And so I would just tell you to, fully engage in these programs, learn what's all available, and make sure that you are building relationships with all of the people you'll come across in the programs.
Engaged. Come in, know what you be prepared. From day one, start building that relationship with that instructor. Go introduce yourself. We see a lot of, even with the online, and online is very unpopular, and a lot of our students that are online are not as engaged as someone is in person. If you're taking online opportunities in some of those classes, reach out to that instructor via email or via video chat, set up a time weekly or bi-weekly or monthly to go in and talk to that instructor. Just make sure you stay on top of your work. I mean, most students are unsuccessful in college because they don't do the work. They procrastinate, they wait, and then all of a sudden they got to get it together last minute and they don't have enough time. Study, some people have to study a lot. Some people study very little and still are successful. Be engaged, learn, build up relationships with your fellow classmates. I used to, when I was an instructor, I tell my students, you're going to learn more from the people, your peers sitting next to you than you are from me. My job is to facilitate that learning experience. Go above and beyond. Build those relationships with industry. Take advantage of anybody that comes in, career fairs, job fairs, speakers, guest speakers that come in, start that networking opportunity, find out from them what are the most important aspects of that career. But most importantly, don't get behind. Stay on top of it and be engaged.
What are some common mistakes individuals make when they first start out on a learning path?
Some of the mistakes that we see from university students are that they don't take advantage of the services on campus. So, one of the services that we offer in career planning is helping you with anything related to getting you a job. So, that's maybe starting your very first resume or taking a look at the resume you already have and helping you polish it so it shows you in your best light. Getting ready for interviews. If you've never done a professional interview, you may not really be familiar with the process. So having someone help you with those things. But we're not the only service on campus. So it could be tutoring. You could take advantage of that, the writing center on campus. And it could be just something as simple as talking to a librarian. If you've never done research before, and maybe you have a huge research project, scheduling an appointment with your librarian can be so, so valuable. And these are little things that students just don't think about. So I think really taking advantage of the things that you're already paying for through your fees within the campus, can really help you get a leg up and be more professional and have those skill sets that you really need when you graduate.
And so when you first start out in apprenticeship programs, there are some things that I would certainly recommend that we all do, right? And that is that really we want to make sure we come in and really understand the ground rules of that specific apprenticeship program, because they're all very different. And what happens a lot of times is we come in and we assume, either because someone told you about the program they were in, or you may have been in another program before, so we start to assume that all apprenticeships are the same, and they're not. And so what happens is we kind of come in and we kind of do the generic approach to the apprenticeship program. What does that look like? It's like, well, I come in and I take advantage of the 1 or 2 trainings that they provide to check off the box. So the apprenticeship program says you got to, let's say, for example, get 1,100 hours, to complete the apprenticeship program. So I come in and I get my 1,100 hours, but I missed the opportunities that I had to get additional training and certification because I just followed this standard, line protocol, if you will, of just doing this, then doing this, then doing that. So that's one of the things that I see all the time that we make mistakes at doing. The other big thing, again, as I, was saying in terms of that mistake, is that we take the idea that, let's say I started out and I was in an apprenticeship program for logistics. And then I get somewhere in the program and I figure out that logistics is not what I want to do. I want to do something else. So what we do is we don't complete the program. That's a big no-no. Finish the program because again, there's going to be things you're going to learn. And I know that you're going to say, well, it's going to waste my time. No, it's not. You're going to learn something in that approach and you're going to complete something. And from an employer perspective, it's the completion of the program that's most important. Every time you start and stop something because you didn't find it interesting or you found it challenging, those things are looked at and they're looked at very negatively by the employers who are considering you for the job opportunity. So if you start something, finish it. Even if you decide that I'm not going to necessarily go into that field, I promise you there's going to be something you're going to learn. And again, there's going to be people you're going to meet that are going to be helpful to you down the line. And so there's nothing, as I said before, that you're not going to be connected to from a technology perspective in these apprenticeship opportunities that is not going to be helpful in your career. And so whether you're in logistics, you're in healthcare, you're in IT, you're in manufacturing, none of those things really matter. They provide some of the skills and knowledge of that particular industry. But most important is the finishing of the program and the knowledge you're going to gain and the people you're going to meet. Because I will tell you, this is a very small industry and we all know each other. And so it doesn't matter which one of these programs you start in, we're going to know that such and such was in my program and didn't complete it, but now you're over here in my program asking for another opportunity, and that's not going to look good. So complete what you started.
I think lack of engagement, as I mentioned, taking classes maybe that are a little advanced. We have a lot of students in the technical college system. They want to jump in the associate's degree level because associate's degree is sometimes more looks more appealing than a diploma program. So, but yet the diploma math may be all the math that you need. It's overloading. I say overloading your wagon is the term I use a lot. Taking too many classes. The old saying is you eat an elephant, you're going to take one bite at a time. So don't try to work on a master's degree when you don't have your bachelor's or your associate's degree first. So take your time being engaged. As I mentioned in previous comments, just waiting, procrastinating, seek help. Most, if not all colleges have tutorial areas, student success centers. Reach out. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You may be a little shy of asking questions in front of a group. That's fine. Stay after class, talk to the instructor. Find out, take advantage of the library, the other different resources, that they're available for you. Do your investigation, go out and look, build those relationships within the college, have study groups, find your peers in the room that, that have a similar schedule that you do and, study together, run answers off of each other, just staying ahead of the game.
What advice do you have for someone as they transition from a learning path into a career?
I think this is one of the most difficult things to do is going from a learning environment to a working environment or a business environment. I think really paying attention to how people function in your workplace and emulating the people that you admire and think are doing a great job. I think that's one piece of it. I think also having patience and giving yourself grace as you are learning. No one expects you to know all the things that you need to know. It's just not realistic. So, asking good questions, building relationships with people that you're working with, and again, just giving yourself some grace and knowing that you're still learning and growing and you're never going to have all of the right answers, but being willing to be humble and ask questions when you need to.
The advice that I would give someone who is in a learning pathway and now looking to go into their career would be that I would not think of it in a linear sense. In other words, don't think that you got to go down this learning pathway and then I'm going to get into my career. What I would be doing is thinking about the career, right? And then the learning pathway is just part of the process. And I hope that makes sense. In other words, when I was in my career and decided I wanted to be in sales, all the learning pathways that I went through, and I've been through many, over that course of time, all of them were part of me becoming a better salesperson. So think about it this way. I then learned communications. I then learned networking. I learned how to, connect with people and build better relationships, which both personally helps me both in my professional and personal life. I have learned about various technologies. So as a consultant, which I was through most of my career, at the end of my career, I could consult on many different things because I had many different pieces of knowledge and understood how they connected, right? Because all things do connect, especially when we talk about it from a technology standpoint. And so because I could do that, and most importantly, articulate that message, right? Because that's what's most important. As you're listening to me now, hopefully you're sitting there saying, man, this guy makes sense. Man, this guy, I've never heard it this way. Maybe you're not saying he makes any sense at all. But the point is the ability to articulate those messages that of the things that you learn are most important. And that's going to come from you thinking about your career as you go through the pathways. If you're sitting there going through the pathways and not thinking about the job you're going to do, right? Then you're not asking the right questions while you're in the pathway, right? You're not thinking about the networking opportunities that you could be connecting with while you're in the pathway that pertain to the job. And that's why I'm saying it's so important to make sure you're talking with someone who's already doing the job and can connect you with what the pathway knowledge and teaching is helping you with, because they all come together. And so I would tell you, don't think linearly. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, but don't see the connection between them other than I got to do this thing before I can do the next. See them as kind of integrated in the sense that everything that I'm doing is related to my career, and so the pathway is important from a variety of different perspectives: the knowledge, the networking, the process, etc. And that way you're going to get the most out of your pathway that's going to prepare you for the career that you're going to go into.
While you're in college, through internships, apprenticeships, even just working part-time. We work with a lot of employers who now are getting a lot more receptive to bringing college students, on while they're in school, working with their flexibility in their schedule. It's just trying to relate that education with that work experience. If you're doing that simultaneously, it's very difficult now to go in and go through a 4-year pathway or a 2-year pathway or even a diploma program, then go to work. A lot of our employers are looking for that experience. So that student may not be the straight A student, but they've got that experience working simultaneously in a program similar or exact program that they're studying. That will by far be a lot better off. Building those relationships, those networking opportunities when companies are coming on site, have a sounding board with those companies of, hey, I'm taking this class. Would you advise that? You know, getting some feedback from that potential employer. Doing your research on jobs. You know, if you're not able to work while you're going to school at the same time, go on, you know, your monster jobs, your Indeeds. Look down at the job skills required. You know, do I have those, or am I taking, when I have some electives, am I taking these classes that align with that? You know, what is the most important? And another thing I will share with students is also, what is your backup plan? You know, if this career doesn't work out or this career changes, if technology changes that, then what is my backup plan? So having a educational pathway that allows you some electives or some opportunities to take some classes that may not fit exactly into the career pathway you're looking for, but gives you some opportunities to expand your career pathway. An example is we have a lot of students that take engineering. That is heavy math, that is heavy practical, whether it's civil, electrical, mechanical engineering. But a lot of our engineers become leaders within a company. So are you taking any business classes? Are you taking any leadership classes, Lean Six Sigma type classes? So having that background while you're in that educational role will give you a lot of advantages over students who just know one particular job field.